3 ways not to price your house. Number 1, pricing it because that's how much money you need to get out of the house in order to buy your next house. The person buying your house doesn't care what you think you need. They want to pay a fair price for the house. So what are the other mistakes people make when pricing their house? That's what we'll talk about next. Hi, I'm Kelly Vandever. I'm a real estate agent in the Alpharetta, Georgia area with Keller Williams, North Atlanta. So what are the other ways that people make mistakes about pricing their house? One is basing it on what their neighbors said they got for their house. Now, sometimes it's an honest mistake, sometimes it's a mishearing, but neighbors may not always tell you the truth about how much they got when they sold their house. Or you may have thought they said $350,000 when they said $315,000. Honest mistake. Therefore, it's probably not a good idea to just take the number that you got from your neighbor that sold their house and put the same number on it. And number 3, don't base the number that you put on the sale of your home based on any particular website that tells you what your home is worth. You know the one I mean. Rhymes with willow. Here's what those websites don't yet calculate. They don't take into account whether a neighbor put in granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, whereas another neighbor had all the original fixtures from 1996. They also don't account for things like one house has a brand new roof and the other one has the original HVAC system. So how should you price your home? Here's the thing. You own the house. It's your ultimate decision on how you price the house. But I'm guessing that the reason why you're listening to this is because you want some expert advice on how to price your house. I'll tell you what it is that I do, but I also recommend that you seek out a local real estate agent that can help you. So what do? I let my inner nerd come out, the one that loves analyzing stats. I pull the listings out of the multiple listing service, the different houses that have sold in the last 6 months in your neighborhood in particular. And then I create a spreadsheet. Yes, I love a good spreadsheet. In that spreadsheet, I collect data about the houses that have sold and the different factors in those houses that might account for why the prices varied across the different houses that sold. I record the address, I record the price for which the house sold, and I record whether or not there were any closing costs. What I mean by that is the seller is contributing money towards the buyer's closing cost. Side note here, at some of the lower price points in particular, the buyer often will ask the seller for closing costs. Now, some sellers kind of don't like that idea. They're like, why am I having to pay somebody to buy my house? I encourage people who are selling their house to take a step back, look at the bigger picture. What's the net of what they are getting for the sale of their house? So the sales price minus the closing cost. That's really what the number is that they need to look at. Okay, now back to the spreadsheet, the lovely spreadsheet. I'm looking for clues to indicate why people paid more or less for any particular house in that neighborhood. What are some of the key features that most of the houses have in that neighborhood? What are people expecting to get? Having that information is key to making sure that we price the house right. So why is it important to price the house right? I'm fortunate that I work with a brokerage that provides us with many tools. And one of them is a different spreadsheet, not the one I created, but a different spreadsheet that has data for the multiple listing service and lets us be able to analyze past trends to be able to better serve our clients. This spreadsheet has a magical tab that helps me really illustrate this point. On my spreadsheet here, I can narrow down what area of the city that we're talking about. So I'm going to select area 14, which is here in the Alpharetta area. And for the price range, I'm going to choose between $300,000 and $499K. That's where I think this particular house will be in the price range. And then I come over to this magic tab and it helps me illustrate my point. So let's say that the person selling the home thinks that they should ask $435,000, but looking at the data that I'm talking about in my spreadsheet, I think it should be priced at $415,000. Based on actual market data, What the indications are is that the house, if we priced it at 415, it would actually sell for 415 in about 6 days. Whereas if we price it at 435, okay, $20,000 higher, we'd actually probably get 403 for the house, and it would take 136 days to sell. Down below here on the spreadsheet, this is the carrying cost. Because it took longer to sell, it will actually cost them even more money. So that is why it's so important to get the house priced right. If you don't, it will take longer to sell and it will probably sell for less. At least that's what the data shows us. I can imagine what some of you are saying right now. You're thinking, Kelly, I'm not in a big hurry. I'll just go ahead and put the price I want for the house. And I don't mind if it sits a while, as long as I get the price I want for my house. I hear it all the time. I get the logic that you're thinking works, but that's not what the data show. What this chart illustrates is the percentage of sales price to original list price and measuring it across the number of weeks that a house is on the market. And what you see is that the price steadily goes down the longer it is on the market. So that approach of thinking, well, I'll just leave it on the market till the right buyer comes along doesn't work. Okay, so I know some of you are thinking, but Kelly, if it sells really quickly, it's because you priced it too low. Well, here's the thing. In this particular market where it's very competitive to get a house because there are more people wanting to buy than wanting to sell, it's impossible to price the house too low. Let me give you an example to show you what I mean. I was working with some sellers and I pulled the comps for the neighborhood like I always do. And something strange was going on. Houses without basements were selling for around $400,000, $405,000. But houses with basements were selling for a lot less, like $375,000. And it didn't make sense on the surface. Usually, houses with basements sell for more than houses without basements, all other things being equal. But things are rarely equal. With a little more digging, I figured out that those houses that sold for a lot less, that had the basements, were on this part of the subdivision that overlooked a busy 4-lane road. So they were less desirable. They didn't have nice backyards. So my client had a basement, had a beautiful backyard, and we were struggling with what price we should price it at. We knew it was worth more than $400,000, even though $400,000 was clearly $25,000 more than what those other basement homes had sold for. So I recommended to my clients that they priced it at $400,000. Now, we all thought that it would sell for more than that, but why $400,000 was because, let's face it, when people are looking, they're probably going to look up to $400,000. They might spend $405,000 on the right house, but when they're doing their search, they probably are only looking up to $400,000. And we would still get the people that are looking up to $410,000 or $425,000. We would still show up in their searches as well. The other thing that these clients wanted to do is we only allowed people to come in and see the house during the hours of the open house. So the first weekend it was listed, we had an open house, and we let people come through at that time. What that does is it condenses the number of people that get to see the house into this tiny time slot. And as people are watching other people waiting to get in, looking at the house, they realize they need to move quickly and they need to put in their best offer. How did it go? It went really well. We got 7 offers on the house, all at or above asking, and we ended up selling for $415,000. The clients were thrilled with the results. I was thrilled with the results, and the person that got the house, that was the winning bid, they were thrilled with the results too. Now, this house wasn't just an anomaly. There's other houses I've sold, similar kind of circumstances. And I've been on the buyer side too. I worked with one buyer. We put in an offer that was $15,000 over asking, no closing cost, and we lost the bid. Somebody else bid higher than us. So the moral of the story is you can't underprice your house in this market. If it's a great house, people will see that. They know that there's a low inventory. There's not a lot of houses to buy. they will drive up the price to where it should be. Now, there could be some concerns with the house appraising for that much, but that's probably a topic for another video. So to recap, you can price your house wherever you want, but if it's priced too high, it will sit and sit and sit and sit and sit and probably sell for a lot less. Or you can price your house right the first time and sell it quickly and for the most money. So what factors go into pricing a house? Let's go back to the original spreadsheet. Again, I'm collecting information about houses that have already sold. I'm seeing what people are willing to pay, and sometimes I can tell the difference between what they'll pay for a house, for instance, that has granite countertops or all wood floors versus a house that doesn't. Of course, I'm looking for things like, does the property have a garage? How many cars? 1, 2, 3 cars? The year the house was built, the number of square feet. Does a house have a master on the main? Houses with a master on the main are becoming more and more desirable as the baby boomers are aging. I'm in that category. And some of the Gen Xers, I think, are keeping an eye out for that as well. Does it have a basement? Is the basement finished or unfinished? And then I look for characteristics inside the house that can influence price, such as kitchens and flooring. In kitchens, I record the type of countertop they have and the kind of appliances they have. Granite and solid stone typically are considered more desirable than laminate. Stainless steel appliances are more desirable than white or black appliances or appliances that have a mix of those different colors. The idea here is the more desirable the features are, the bigger the buying pool and the better the prices that the seller can get for the house. I record the type of flooring. Hardwood is considered more desirable, but the condition of the hardwood can also impact the price. A house that has a mix of flooring is generally a little less desirable than one that's got all one type of flooring on the main floor, for instance. If the house has new carpet, that's definitely more desirable than one with older carpet, even if it's been cleaned. And I also look at bathrooms and fixtures, both light fixtures and plumbing fixtures. Are they newer? Have they been updated? Or are they several years old and original to the home? Older homes with bathrooms that are original, for instance, with the gold shower surround, they're going to be less desirable than homes that have updated bathrooms. Same with the light fixtures. If the light fixtures are the original gold, that's going to be considered less desirable than ones that have been updated. I also look for other factors that could significantly impact the price of a house, such as a pool, overlooking a really busy road like we talked about before, or houses that are haunted. I'm kidding on that last one. They don't list haunted houses in the MLS system. Well, there's not a field for that anyways. And actually, houses that have an incredibly busy road or a really steep driveway or some other factor that might not be desirable typically won't show those off in the pictures. So if I see some houses that seem to be really priced below what the other houses are, I'll drive by the houses and see what's going on with those houses. That can help us understand where the pricing is. If there are some houses that are under contract that haven't sold yet, I'll also call up the agents involved in that transaction and try to find out what the house actually sold for. Once I gather all that information, this is where the subjective part comes in. Looking at the data, analyzing, and seeing where I think that house should be priced. I review that information with my client, and the client, again, makes the ultimate decision, but I try to help them by giving them the benefit of all the data that I've analyzed. That's not to say that we always get the price right. Remembering that you can't underprice a house, and remembering that you typically get the best price for your house in that first couple of weeks that it's on the market, I prepare my clients for the fact that we may have gotten it wrong. And if it doesn't get an offer, we have a lot of showings and we don't get an offer, then that means we probably priced it too high and we need to reduce the price. Or if we only get one offer and it's less than what we were hoping to get, we might be way better off accepting that offer than waiting to hope something better comes along. Don't trust your gut when it comes to selling your house. Do your research, get the data, because if you price your house right, it will definitely make your move easier.